Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's Anime Club discussion. In honor of Library Week, we're going to be talking about the anime Ascendance of a Bookworm today. So, from the title of this anime, as you might have guessed, the main character, who is named Mine, is a bookworm, and she has a very abundant love of books, let's just say. The priest calls it abnormal. Now, this season is presented as the priest, this character who becomes important later in the series, looking into Mind's memories to figure out why she has the otherworldly knowledge that she has and why she has this obsession with books. So he uses a magical item because magical items exist in this world that the main character has been born into. He finds out that she was a girl or woman named Motosu Aranu who lived presumably in modern day Japan, who had a love of books. She worked in the library and she read everything and anything that she could get her hands on. But as is common in isekai anime, before you can go to another world, tragedy has to strike. So tragedy strikes, no surprise, she perishes, and her dying wish is to be able to read books in her next life as well. Now, this doesn't quite work out for her. She kind of gets maybe the exact opposite of what she wished for. She's reborn into this world, into this the body of this frail, sickly girl named Mine, and she's asking her family for books, and they're like, "What's that?" And so, yeah, could you imagine the shock of being reborn in another world? Where's this at? And you can't, and they're like, what are you talking about? I don't know what this item is. So after her family leaves, she looks around the house to try and find a book. She's not able to find one, and so she begins to think that maybe this world is like the medieval times or earlier, the olden times in the world where books were really expensive and only nobles really had a chance to get their hands on them and to experience them. She can't find any writing, which makes her doubt that maybe there's not even a writing system in this world. She is really distraught after looking around all day. The family comes back home. She's torn up the house. And they're like, what's wrong? And she's just like, she wants some books. And she doesn't know how she's going to survive at this point because her comfort device is books, and she couldn't find any, and she's in this strange world where she doesn't know anyone, and she really wants somebody to understand that, but nobody does. Not her mother, not her sister, not her father, which is the family that she has that she's been born into as this sickly little girl. Now, as time goes on, after this breakdown that she has asking for a book here in the anime, as time goes on, she does learn a little more about the world. Now, we did say that she is sickly, but once she kind of gets a little bit stronger, her first outing is going with her mother to the market. Now, this is a good thing, going to the market, because it allows her to see that there is indeed a writing system. At first in the market, she doesn't see any shop signs or anything like that. They're just pictures denoting what things are, which isn't, uncommon in a place or a time where literacy levels would have been super low, because people don't need to know how to really read. They need to know how to live and survive. But in the market, she does see prices on items, which gives her hope, because that means there's a number system. If there's a number system, there is probably a writing system in this world. So she's that much closer to her goal of books. She does pick up the number system relatively quickly, and her mom's like, wow, you're so amazing. And it's like, which she can't tell her mom that, in my previous life, I But, I've delved into psychology, geology, every field of research, things that you can't even imagine. But, she learns this numbering system. Now, during this part, she does kind of get separated from her mom a little bit. Her mom leaves her with some people to rest because, as we said before, mine is really sickly and frail. And during this time, she does see a book in a shop. So this is really a big turning point in the anime because now she realizes, yes, there are books in this world. There's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. However, her fears are confirmed. Books are really expensive. The book in question that she finds in the shop is one was pawned by a rich person who couldn't pay their bills. But really the shopkeeper can't sell it to anybody because nobody's rich enough in the section of the city that they're in. They're in a market, but they're in kind of the lower class area. Nobody's going to be able to afford to buy a leisure item like a book. But at least at this point, she has hope because, there are books in this world. Now this is before the point where she kind of decides she's going to make books herself, which is a very intensive process. She has a memory of the stories from Earth, which, but they're not written down, which, and on Earth too, and in other cultures in our past, that oral tradition has been really strong because telling stories, speaking, people may know how to speak even if they don't know how to read or write. So she's going to set off to make books. Now, her otherworldly knowledge does allow her some advantages. Here we see her talking to the granddaughter of the head of the Merchant Association to make a business deal, where she finds out also that the Merchant Association head's granddaughter has this sickness that mine has as well, which is called the devouring. And this is really a serious thing. It comes with the fever, the same fever that, really led to the end of the person that inhabited the body before the current mine. And this fever will spike and it, get out of control, and she's frail and sickly anyway, and it most likely leads to death. The characters here are under 7 years old. 7 years old is when, in the society in that world, you have your baptism. Now, the knowledge that mine shows off from Earth, basically, is really something that makes her childhood friend suspicious. Now, he's been helping her with all of her ideas, with the things that she's made, her quest to make books, which she knows some different methods from reading of how to make paper, but this makes him super suspicious. And at first he tells her, we're going to talk about this after, I help you with your goal of making paper. And so he finally confronts her and asks, are you the mind that I know? And she's like, no, I'm not. She did disappear, pass away, whatever you will. Like, he seems at first to be under the impression that she's the one that, devoured the little girl's soul or mind, what have you. And, the current mind used to be Motosu is like, no, I didn't do that. She succumbed to this fever, to this sickness that I have, that we both had. And she's probably gone forever. I haven't heard from her since I was born into this body. And Lutz is heartbroken about this, which he'd always kind of been paying attention to her, kind of had probably a little crush on her, but they didn't really start hanging out until mine's personality changed. And so really all of his interaction with mine has been with the with the new version of mine 2.0, who is the reborn person. And, she says, no, I didn't do anything to mine. The sickness is what took her, and it's taking me too. And he's like, I don't believe you, tell me that you're at fault, like, so that I can blame you and not just that this was a freak accident. And she's tells him, like, she releases her frustration because she hasn't vented to anyone up to this point in the anime. She's like, I didn't choose to be here. I love books. My dying wish was to be in a world, which she doesn't say that, but her dying wish was to be in a world where there are lots of books for her to read. And she was born into the opposite type of world, in a world where books existed, but where they were pretty much beyond a reach for somebody of the station in which she was born. And so that's why she's having to go through this stuff, to make paper and make books. So she tells Lutz, her childhood friend, that, you know what, if you want me gone, just say it, and I'll go. Like, I'll let the fever, I'll let the sickness devour me, and I'll just go, because as we find out in the series, as we found out from the granddaughter of the head of the Merchant Association, this sickness really affects you more if you're disheartened, if you lose focus, if you're sad, that kind of thing. So she tells him, like, you know what, like, if ever you tell me, if you feel like I've taken your friend's life, you tell me and I'll just let myself go. And he tells her, like, how long has this been going on? She's like, it's been a while. You saved me, though, she says, because there was a point at which she had lost faith, and his promise to help her before all this started, to make paper is what really gave her heart. Like, I can do this. I'm not alone in this world. Somebody's going to help me achieve this, especially since she's very frail and sickly. So he finds out that she's been mine basically the entire time that they've really been hanging out. And so he's like, okay, you're my mine now. Like, you're mine now. Mine as in her name, not mine as in you belong to me. But, he's a pretty sharp kid. He realizes that she's been mine for quite a while. He asks if the family knows, if her family knows that she's not who she was. And she's like, well, no, they haven't ever questioned it. Who just automatically assumes that their 5-year-old daughter has become possessed by the soul of somebody from a more technologically advanced alternate reality? Like, that's not the first thing that comes to mind if your child starts acting weird. Maybe it's puberty, kids change, and then also she's been sickly since she's a child. Any reason could be the reason for her change. So Lutz is like, I'm not gonna tell you to leave this world. I'm gonna stay by your side. I'm gonna continue to help you. And this is really a turning point for Mine, because Mine learns that, she has an ally that knows the truth of who she is and still accepts her. And that's a very big piece of the puzzle for her existence in this new world, because before she's been completely alone. Nobody knew who she was, really, the things that she was going through, but now he knows, and he's decided to stick by her. And so that's, a really important part to her, and it's really touching. Generally this type of slice of life drama isn't my favorite thing, but I really, I like this when I watch it. It's a really touching scene. The whole series as a whole, I gave it a try, which is, again, why it's important to try new things. And, you guys will probably like it too. So after he confronts Mine and accepts her, there's a part in the anime when she's exploring different options of how to basically live her life in this world. Now, one of the things is that when she goes to have her baptism, she discovers in the church where she goes to have her baptism that they have a library. And so she wants to join the church to have access to the books, because, again, Bookworm. Now, this may seem like an impulsive decision, but you can't, fault her. Like, she didn't get the orientation guide for being reborn into another world. But one of her acquaintances, this guy, Benno, who is a member of the Merchant Association, tells her that she doesn't want to join the church really because of the kind of menial work she'll have to do. Because the church itself has just gone through something. Before, most of the like the upper echelon of the church is nobles and the lower echelon are the commoners, and they have to do a lot of menial tasks. Recently, there has been a cleansing of the corrupt upper class, I guess you could say, in their city, country, and the upper class now has been subsidized by the members of the upper class that were part of the church. So now there are fewer nobles in the church, and there's fewer funds going into the church because of that, and also there's less mana, because what we discover is that the devouring is mana. Now, mana is really important because it's also, it also has bearing on the crops, the growth of crops in this world. So, not enough mana means possibly not enough food. Food shortages could lead to riots and all sorts of nasty things. So they really want to reel her in. And I think they've got the perfect target because, she's a commoner. She's a commoner. She's not of noble birth. And she has a devouring, and it's kind of like the perfect deal. Like, we can kind of force her to join the church, but this guy tells her you need to try to figure out a way to negotiate not having to do this menial labor, and because he knows that she's frail. And so she takes this to heart. She's found out, that maybe this option isn't what's best for her, even though she kind of jumped on the bandwagon as soon as she knew that there was a library there. Now, going over back to Lutz, who has decided to help her, his dream has been to be a traveling merchant. And because mine has connections with the Merchant Association that she got, from selling her otherworldly knowledge to make profits, which, she needs money to treat her illness, is what she finds out. She introduces Lutz to a member of this merchant association that can tell him how it is to live as a traveling merchant, and he wants to dissuade Lutz from living as a traveling merchant because children, when they're baptized, children aren't baptized until they're 7, and they automatically get citizenship once they're baptized. And citizenship it's kind of like their identity. It allows them to live in the city walls and be protected by the guards and take advantage of whatever services and whatever, opportunities there are from living there in the city. And this guy that has lived as a traveling merchant tells them, like, listen, this is a hard life. It's a hard way to go. You don't want to do it. And so Lutz is dissuaded from that, and he realizes that the ultimate goal of people that are born into a merchant family, that are born into that way of life, is to get citizenship. So he already has basically the end goal of people that are in the profession that he wants to be in. Well, I'm sure not all of them want to be a citizen, but, the majority of them just want to live life inside some city walls, to have roots, to be able to get married, to be able to, be a part of society. So, mine does this for him, to give him an opportunity to learn more about the path that he wants to pursue and decide if he still wants to pursue it. But, luckily he's decided to help mine, to do this. And so he's going to become the sole merchant that helps her to make and sell her ideas, which is really a good fit for these two because, he's the only one that knows who mine is and accepts her for who she really is. And at one point, mine's fever overtakes her, and Frida, who's the granddaughter of the head of the Merchant Association, who's become her friend, lends her this magical item that's super expensive to kind of suppress the fever. And that's when Frida tells her, the real deal of why it's so expensive to deal with this sickness and to survive it is because what is required are magical items, and magical items are the exclusive property of the noble class. Now, this really gives us some insight into what the makeup of this world. Really, that's a tool to keep the commoners suppressed, because mana, now we know, is really the devouring. And when a commoner is born with really powerful mana, they usually don't live to be like 10 or 11 years old. And that's what's happened to mine. And because the nobles control these magical items, they also control, basically the lives of the powerful commoners, make sure that they don't rebel. They don't really cover this in the anime, but that's my personal opinion and feeling on it. So she learns that these magical items don't only suppress the sickness for a little while. And that, the real way that Frida has found, one of the things that people do is to become attached to a noble. So Frida has already had an agreement to become a concubine of a noble once she comes of age, and so she'll be his concubine, basically his property, and that noble will provide the life-saving magical items that she needs to continue to live. So this is a choice that's laid before mine, along with joining the church, or not doing anything and basically letting the sickness run its course and end her life, possibly within a year from now, from a year from the time at this point in the anime. And so she has to decide whether she wants to live in the church, and risk being dying from being overworked, or selling herself to a noble, basically, or dying. So like 2 out of 3 paths lead to certain death. So this is really a tough decision for someone that at this time, at this point in the anime, even through the end of the first season of the season of it, mine is 7-8 years old. Between 5 to 7 years old, like throughout 5 to 8 years old throughout the entire course of the anime. So even though she's reborn into another world, this is a tough decision to make. And other girls like Frida have had to make that same decision at the same age, even though they have had the advantage of being a grown-up, or, being able to mature. Frida didn't have a choice in maturing fast. She has to deal with this life-threatening sickness. So mine has a heart-to-heart with her family, where she lays down kind of the choices that are before all of them. They thought that after the magical item, she didn't tell them, they thought that after the magical item, her sickness was cured. And she's like, no, it's incurable. This isn't something that is going to go away. It exists because I have mana in my body, and the older I get, the stronger it's going to become. And at least once a year, this energy is going to build up to the point where it's going to kill me, unless I have like a magical item to save me, which is one of my choices, is to join, to basically go off to the noble district, as the property of a noble, and I'll be able to live, but I'll never be able to see you again. And or join the church, which is also an equally unattractive option. But her family's going to try to help her out by, trying to talk the church into her not having to do menial labor. So basically not dooming her to death because she is so frail. But at this point in the anime, she's laying everything out on the table, and she tells her family, like, you guys are the only ones that I have in this world, and I don't want to be away from you. And so I want to live with you, whether that means that I'm going to die, I'm going to take that chance, and we're just going to roll the dice. And this is a very touching scene in anime. It's a really like everybody on the same page kind of moment about how serious this is. About how serious the sickness is and the choices before them are. So they're going to go, through this together, knowing that chances are that mine will not survive because she has chosen to stay with her family and continue to try to make books. She's going to go for it. She's going to go for her dream, and she's going to stay with her family, even though that means almost certain death. Within another year from now, when the fever, will around that time reach a peak again. It's a very tearful moment. Almost as tearful as the time when Lutz accepts her for who she is. Now, the genre of anime I usually like is action, so towards the end of this season, my favorite scene occurs, which is where, she goes to the church and her parents are trying to, negotiate a good deal for her, which we know she joins the church because at the very beginning of the anime, we see her wearing the same clothes as the priest and him looking into her past. But at this point, the priest that they're interacting with is a noble and he's very arrogant. And he basically feels like you guys should be grateful to me for taking her in. She's a sickly little girl and she's gonna die without these items. You're just commoners. I'm a noble, and you're just gonna give me your daughter. And the father's like, no, I don't want my daughter to live like an orphan, to be doing this menial labor. That means certain death. And obviously he doesn't take this very kindly, and he's going to basically separate the family by force and possibly execute the family, and mine isn't going to have that. So at this point we really get a chance to see what Mana's like once it's unleashed, which is also again tying back, like I said, to my feeling that nobles use the devouring, or the magical items that are necessary to control the devouring, to keep commoners from acquiring enough strength to change the status quo, because as we'll see in a moment, Mana's pretty powerful. Even this little girl is going to be able to overpower two grown men, which, these members of the church, the head priest in the white and the other priest in the blue that we see at the, beginning of the series, both presumably have mana, but even as a little girl, she's stronger than them both. And as we have covered in this, mana just grows as you get older. You become more powerful the older that you get. So already she has enough mana in her that it's, endangering her life, and she's less than 8 years old. This scene is a really action-packed scene. It's towards the end of this season. It's really exciting for me. Like I said, normally this genre of anime isn't my go-to, but I really enjoy this one, and I think you guys will enjoy it too. Ascendance of a Bookworm is available free streaming on Crunchyroll. Like many of the like the other animes that we've talked about in the anime club and that we usually watch in the anime club. So give it a try. This anime is one that we've talked about for Library Week. The theme for Library Week being the library or books, which is a very core theme for this anime. Mine, this main character who's born into this world and now has not only has to deal with a life-threatening sickness, but has to go through several hurdles to try and acquire books, trying to make them, now joining the church in order to be able to become closer to them. And, culminating in this scene where she basically has to subdue the leadership of the church by force to make them willing to let her join the church, not as a menial labor type of worker, which she can't handle with her frail body. Anyway, so that's been the anime that we've talked about for Library Week. Join us again to know what anime we're going to be talking about next time, but it should be exciting as this one. I like the scene where the priest is trying to stop her from, taking the life of this priest who has threatened her family. Like I said, this is my favorite scene. And that's all that we're gonna watch today. Thank you for watching. Please visit us online at hcpl.net, as well as download the Overdrive or Libby apps in order to check out our electronic materials, including audiobooks and ebooks. Also, keep an eye out for more digital content from the North Channel branch and the Harris County Public Library systems. Thank you for watching.